The fluorescent lights of the Erewhon market hummed a sound that drilled straight into Hannah's morning-sick nausea. She was just trying to buy ginger ale and saltines when a voice smooth and mocking cut through the aisle. "Well, well, Hannah, divorce really hasn't been kind to you." She froze her hand, hovering over the crackers. It was Jack, her ex-husband, looking immaculate in a tailored suit, a tall blonde dripping off his arm. His eyes raked over her messy bun, her old sweatshirt, and her slightly rounded stomach. "Wow!" He sneered, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. "You've really let yourself go. Piling on the pounds, aren't we?" Hannah's breath hitched, a hot wave of shame and anger washing over her. The woman beside Jack, whose name she vaguely recalled as Tanya, let out a high-pitched, delicate snicker, like the tinkling of broken glass. "Jack, don't be mean," Tanya said, though her eyes were anything but kind. She adjusted the strap of her Gucci handbag, her gaze dismissive. "I'm not being mean. I'm being honest," Jack said, puffing out his chest. He was a man who feasted on the insecurities of others, and Hannah had been his primary source of sustenance for 8 long years. "I guess I got out at the right time. Can't have my wife looking, well, like that." He was fishing. He wanted a reaction. He wanted her to cry, to yell, to crumble, just as she always had. In the past, his words would have flayed her. She would have apologized inexplicably for her own existence. But today was different. Inside her, protected by the very pounds he was mocking, was a secret. A tiny flickering heartbeat that had changed everything. She wasn't just Hannah, the failed wife. She was Hannah, a mother-to-be. She looked at Jack, her eyes tracing the familiar lines of his handsome, cruel face. The face she had once loved and now thankfully only pitied. She clutched the basket of ginger ale to her chest, a chest that was tender and swollen. "I'm sorry you feel the need to say that, Jack," she said, her voice surprisingly steady, though her knees were trembling. "Oh, a little sensitive, are we?" he pressed, stepping closer, invading her space. He smelled of expensive cologne and the same arrogance he always had. "Just a little friendly advice from your ex. Maybe lay off the carbs. You don't want to be alone and sloppy, do you?" Hannah's hand instinctively moved to her stomach. It was a barely there swell, visible only to her or to someone looking to find fault. Jack's eyes followed the movement, and a flicker of something new, confusion, then suspicion, crossed his face. But he dismissed it, mistaking her protective gesture for one of shame. "Anyway," he said, turning to Tanya, "we'll be late for our reservation at Nobu. Good seeing you, Hannah. Try to pull yourself together." He and Tanya swept past, leaving Hannah standing alone in the aisle, their laughter echoing. The humiliation was a physical thing, a heavy cloak settling on her shoulders. She wanted to slide to the floor. Instead, she took a deep, shaky breath, the scent of organic kale and stale air filling her lungs. She paid for her items, her hands shaking as she fumbled with her debit card. The cashier, a young man with kind eyes, gave her a sympathetic glance. "Rough day." "You have no idea," Hannah whispered. She drove home to her small one-bedroom apartment in a modest part of Culver City. It was a far cry from the glass-walled Marina del Rey condo she had shared with Jack. Jack, a moderately successful and deeply indebted financial advisor, had lived and breathed appearances. Their marriage had been a curated Instagram feed, parties, yachts, and designer clothes, all underpinned by Jack's relentless criticism of her. He'd joked about her weight when she was a size 6. He'd suggested she get Botox at 30. He'd managed their finances, which he later learned meant running up massive joint debts while keeping his own bonuses in a private account. The divorce had been brutal. He'd fought her on every single thing, dragging it out until she was so emotionally and financially depleted that she agreed to walk away with almost nothing, just her freedom. She'd spent the last 6 months rebuilding. She'd gotten a job at a small independent bakery, a passion she'd shelved for Jack. She was kneading dough at 4 a.m., her hands covered in flour, and for the first time in years she felt a flicker of peace. And then 2 months ago she had met Dominic. She unlocked her apartment door, the confrontation in the store replaying in her mind. Fat, sloppy, Let yourself go. The old voices of doubt. Jack's voices swirled in her head. She sank onto her lumpy sofa, the tears finally coming hot and angry. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. She picked it up. A simple text message. Landed. On my way. D. A fresh wave of tears came, but this time they were of relief. She wiped her eyes, took a long drink of her ginger ale, and went to the bathroom to wash the humiliation off her face. Jack didn't get to ruin this. He didn't get to touch this one perfect secret thing. She was pregnant. And the father was not just a man, but the man who had shown her what kindness actually was. Hannah and Dominic Winters had met in the most unremarkable way. Hannah's bakery had been hired to cater a small private fundraiser for an environmental nonprofit. It was not a lavish gala, but a quiet, serious gathering of donors at a private home in Pacific Palisades. Hannah was in the kitchen arranging pastries, her hair falling out of its clip, a smudge of flour on her cheek. A man had walked in, startling her. He wasn't in a tuxedo like the other guests. He wore a simple dark gray Henley and jeans. He looked more like a technician than a donor. "I'm sorry," he'd said, his voice quiet. "I was just looking for the coffee." "Oh, it's right here," Hannah said, gesturing to the urn. "Help yourself." He smiled a tired but genuine smile. "These look amazing," he said, pointing to her lemon thyme tarts. "Thank you, I made them." "You did?" He picked one up and bit into it. His eyes closed for a moment. This is incredible. The balance is perfect." They'd talked for 20 minutes hidden away in the kitchen while the buzz of the party continued outside. He didn't ask what she did in the grand Los Angeles sense. He asked what she liked about baking. She told him about the science, the precision, the way yeast felt alive. He listened, really listened. He told her his name was Dominic and that he was in tech. It was only when the host of the party, a well-known philanthropist, burst in. "Dominic, there you are. We're ready to hear from you," that Hannah realized. This was Dominic Winters, the reclusive founder and CEO of Aura Dynamic, a company that was single-handedly revolutionizing green energy storage. He was a man rumored to be worth north of $50 billion, a ghost who never gave interviews and whose photo was almost impossible to find online. He had given her a small apologetic smile and left to give his speech. She'd assumed that was that. An hour later, as she was packing up, he found her by her van. "Hannah," he said, using her name, "I apologize for running off." You're Dominic Winters," she stammered. "I am. And I'm also just Dominic." He held out his phone. "I meant what I said. Those tarts were perfect, and I haven't had a real conversation in a long time. Would you be willing to have another one over dinner, maybe?" Their relationship had been a slow burn. He was cautious, guarded by years of people wanting something from him. She was shattered, healing from years of Jack's emotional abuse. They met in secret. He'd come to her tiny apartment and they'd cook pasta. They'd take long walks on the beach late at night when no one was around. He was the antithesis of Jack. Where Jack was loud, Dominic was quiet. Where Jack demanded, Dominic asked. Where Jack saw her as an accessory, Dominic saw her. He loved her mind, her resilience, her passion for her simple flour-dusted craft. Then 6 weeks ago, the shock. The 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test she'd taken in the bathroom of her bakery. She had been terrified. It was too soon. It was complicated. She was a divorced baker. He was Dominic Winters. She'd told him that night, her voice shaking. "I'm pregnant." He had been silent for a full minute, his expression unreadable. Hannah's stomach had plummeted. This was it. This was where the fairy tale ended. Then he had knelt in front of her, placed a hand gently on her flat stomach, and looked up at her, his eyes shining with a profound, startling emotion. "Ours?" he'd asked. She nodded, tears streaming. "Good." He breathed, a slow smile spreading across his face. That's good. That's everything. Now 20 minutes after her humiliating run-in with Jack, she heard a key in the lock. Dominic had his own key, a symbol of trust that still humbled her. He stepped in, and the small apartment instantly felt safer. Dominic was not a physically imposing man, but he had an aura of solid, centered gravity. He was back from a 3-day trip to Singapore. He dropped his bag, his eyes finding hers instantly. He read her face in a second. "What's wrong?" he asked, crossing the room, his brow furrowed in concern. She tried to brush it off. "Nothing. Just tired. How was the trip?" "Hannah." He cupped her face, his thumbs gently wiping away the traces of her earlier tears. "Don't nothing me. What happened?" The story spilled out. The market, Jack, Tanya, the words, fat, sloppy, let yourself go. Dominic's jaw tightened. A coldness she had never seen before entered his eyes. It was a still, quiet anger that was far more terrifying than Jack's loud bluster. "He said that to you?" It wasn't a question. "Dom, it's fine. He's an idiot. I'm just hormonal." "No." His voice was firm. "It is not fine. It's cruel. And he's not just an idiot. He's a liability." "What does that mean?" she asked, worried. "It means—" He sighed, pulling her into a hug, his arms wrapping protectively around her, one hand splayed possessively over her lower abdomen. "It means he doesn't get to hurt you. Not ever again. I was already having my team look into him just to make sure the divorce was truly final, no loose ends." "Your team, Mr. Kincaid," he said, naming his head of security, a discreet and terrifyingly efficient man. "I wanted to be sure he couldn't trouble you, but I think it's time we expedited that." "No, Dom, please," she said, pulling back. "I don't want you to do anything. It'll just make it worse. He's nobody. He's just Jack. He's the man who humiliated the mother of my child." Dominic said, his voice low and absolute. "That makes him my problem. Now, let's get you off your feet. Have you eaten?" He steered her to the sofa, took the ginger ale from her hand, and went to the kitchen. He didn't rant or rave. He simply began making her tea, his movements precise. But Hannah could see the tension in his shoulders. Jack, in his petty, arrogant cruelty, had just made a very powerful enemy. He just had no idea. Jackery Mason felt fantastic. Bumping into Hannah had been the highlight of his week. She had looked exactly as he'd expected a woman to look without his guidance, a complete and utter mess. It validated every decision he'd made. Leaving her had been like dumping dead weight. Tanya, in contrast, was an asset. She was a model, or at least she'd told him she was, and she looked expensive, which was all that mattered. But Jack's life was not as glossy as his Patek Philippe watch, a high-quality replica, suggested. His job at the mid-level wealth management firm Peterson & Cole was on shaky ground. He hadn't landed a whale in over a year. His clients were dwindling. His commissions were drying up, and his boss, Mr. Peterson, was starting to make pointed remarks in meetings. The condo in the marina was a lease he couldn't really afford. The payments on his BMW were late. Tanya's appetite for designer labels was proving costly. He needed a win, a big one. He was at his desk nursing a post-Nobu hangover when he overheard two senior partners talking by the coffee machine. "Getting a meeting is impossible. The fund is called Aura Dynamic. They're the new gods of green tech." "Who's running it? It's all anonymous." "The rumor is, it's Dominic Winters." Jack's ears perked up. Dominic Winters, the ghost. Landing even a small piece of the Aura Dynamic portfolio would make him a legend. It would save his career. "You two talking about Aura Dynamic?" Jack chimed in, trying to sound casual. One of the partners, a shark named Bennett, gave him a dismissive look. "Don't bother Mason. That's out of your league. They're only meeting with top-tier firms. We're pitching, but I'm leading. Peterson wouldn't let you within a mile of that account. Jack's face burned. We'll see about that. He went back to his desk, his mind racing. He had to find a way in. He spent the day frantically Googling. Aura Dynamic, Dominic Winters. The search results were all the same dry press releases, stock projections. No personal information, no angle. He was about to give up when an old petty instinct kicked in. He thought of Hannah again. He'd been so pleased with her downfall. But then a nagging detail from the grocery store returned to him. The way her hand had moved to her stomach. Not shame, protection. He'd chalked it up to her getting fat. But what if on a whim he logged into an old shared cloud account? He'd set it up for her years ago and had never deleted his access. He felt a thrill of transgression. He sifted through old photos documents. Nothing. Then he saw it. A calendar sync. She'd forgotten to revoke his access. Most of it was boring. Bakery shifts, dentist, and then a recurring appointment. Dr. Howell. Consultation. He Googled the name. Dr. Lena Howell, the Howell Perinatal Group, Los Angeles. Jack's blood ran cold. Perinatal. Pregnancy. His mind spun. Hannah was pregnant. That sloppy, broken woman was pregnant. He did some quick math. They'd been divorced for 6 months. She'd gotten pregnant fast. His first emotion was a bizarre spike of jealousy. Then calculation. Who was the father? Some loser baker. Some new mediocre guy. But the doctor. He clicked the link. The Howell Perinatal Group wasn't just any OB-GYN. Its offices were in a penthouse suite in Beverly Hills. It was known as the most exclusive, most expensive, most discreet practice in the city, catering to celebrities and billionaires who wanted privacy. A bakery employee couldn't afford the copay at Dr. Howell's. A new theory began to form in Jack's mind, dark and exciting. Hannah hadn't just moved on. She had landed someone rich enough to afford Dr. Lena Howell. He leaned back in his chair, a slow, predatory grin spreading across his face. She had hidden this. She had been with this new man while they were finalizing the divorce. He could argue she had hidden assets. He could contest the settlement. He could demand something. He pictured Hannah, her pale, tired face. She was weak. She'd always been weak. And now she had a secret she was clearly paying a lot of money to protect. This was leverage. He didn't know who the man was, but he didn't need to. All he needed to do was threaten to expose her. The kind of man who used a doctor that private would hate a scandal. He would pay. He would pay a lot to make the annoying ex-husband of his new girlfriend go away. Jack picked up his phone. He didn't have Hannah's new number, but he knew where she worked. He'd find her. This was so much better than landing a new client. This was a windfall. Hannah was leaving the bakery after a long shift. It was almost 8 p.m. and the alley behind the small shop was dark. She was exhausted, the pregnancy draining her energy far more than she'd anticipated. She was just fumbling for her car keys when a figure stepped out from the shadows of the dumpster. "You're hard to find, Hannah," Hannah screamed, dropping her keys. They clattered on the pavement. It was Jack. His smile was gone. His eyes were hard, glittering in the dim security light. "Jack, you scared me to death. What are you doing here?" "We need to talk," he said, advancing on her. "No, we have nothing to talk about." She bent to retrieve her keys, but he kicked them, sending them skittering under her car. "I don't think you're in a position to say no," he hissed. "What do you want?" she said, her voice trembling. She backed up against the brick wall of the bakery. The smell of stale yeast and garbage filled her nose. "Dr. Lena Howell," he said, the name dropping into the dark alley like a stone. Hannah's blood turned to ice. I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me," he snapped, slamming his hand against the wall just beside her head. She flinched. I know you're pregnant, Hannah. And I know you're seeing the most expensive baby doctor in California. So who is he? That is none of your business, Jack. It became my business when you were hiding a new rich boyfriend while we were still settling our divorce. You defrauded me. You were hiding assets. That's insane, she cried. I met him months after I left you. That's what you'll say. But a messy lawsuit would sound very different, wouldn't it? Broke ex-wife gets pregnant by wealthy mystery man. It's a good story. I wonder how the press would like it. I wonder how he would like it. Hannah's stomach turned. This was Dominic's worst nightmare. His privacy was the most valuable thing he owned. A scandal like this, it would be catastrophic. What do you want, Jack? She whispered, the fight draining out of her. Smart girl, he sneered, finally asking the right question. I'm in a bit of a jam. I need, let's call it a readjustment of our settlement. A one-time payment. $500,000. Hannah gasped. Jack, I don't have $5. I work in a bakery. But he does, doesn't he? Whoever he is, tell him it's the price of peace, or else I go to the media. I'll paint a very ugly picture of you, Hannah. The gold-digging pregnant ex-wife. I'm sure his very expensive lawyers will love that. You're disgusting. She spat, her anger finally overriding her fear. I'm a realist, he retorted. You have 48 hours to get me the money. If I don't hear from you, I'm calling page 6. He stepped back, admiring his work. She was terrified. Perfect. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness. Hannah slid down the wall, her legs giving out. She sat on the grimy pavement, her body shaking with sobs. She'd crawled out from under his thumb, and now he was back, threatening to crush not only her but Dominic as well. She finally retrieved her keys and drove home, her mind a fog of panic. She couldn't tell Dominic. He would blame himself. She didn't know what he would do, but she knew it would involve his layers of security and lawyers. It would become a situation to be handled. But she couldn't pay. She was trapped. When she got to her apartment, she saw an unfamiliar black sedan parked across the street. A man in a simple suit was in the driver's seat. As she walked to her door, he got out of the car. Ms. Reynolds. Hannah spun around, her heart leaping into her throat. My name is Kincaid. I work for Mr. Winters. His voice was calm with a faint British accent. It was the man Dominic had mentioned. Hello. Mr. Winters was concerned about you working late. I was assigned to ensure your safety. I've been here for an hour. He paused, his gaze sharp. My long-range microphone picked up your entire conversation with Mr. Mason in the alley. Mr. Winters has already been informed of the threat. Hannah's knees went weak again. Oh, God. Please go inside, Ms. Reynolds, Kincaid said, his voice softening slightly. Mr. Winters is waiting for you on a secure line, and let me assure you, Mr. Mason is no longer your problem. Dominic Winters did not get angry like other men. He did not yell or punch walls or make rash decisions. His anger was a drop in temperature. It was a sharpening of focus. It was the quiet, terrifying precision of a surgeon. When Kincaid patched through the audio from the alley, Dominic listened, his expression unchanging, as the man he'd never met threatened the mother of his child. He heard Hannah's fear, her choked sobs. And he made a decision. Mr. Mason's deadline was 48 hours, sir, Kincaid said over the secure line. He won't need that long. Dominic replied, his voice flat. I've seen his file. He's desperate. He's a gambler reaching for his last chip. How do you wish to proceed? A restraining order? We can have his firm's compliance department bury him by morning for ethical violations. No, Dominic said. That's not clean enough. Men like Jack Mason don't learn from being slapped on the wrist. They learn from total annihilation, and they learn best when they inflict it upon themselves. A plan began to form, one that had been germinating ever since Dominic had seen Jack's name on Kincaid's background report, a name on a list of low-level advisors at Peterson & Cole, The same Peterson and Cole that was coincidentally one of a dozen firms desperately pitching for a slot managing a small tranche of Aura Dynamics' new employee pension fund. It was a minor account for Aura, but a whale, as Jack would call it for a firm like his. "Kincaid," Dominic said. "Get me Mr. Peterson's direct line." The next day, Jack Mason felt like a king. He had Hannah trapped. The $500,000 was as good as in his account. He walked into the office with an insufferable swagger. "Peterson wants to see you," his assistant said, her face grim. Jack's stomach tightened. Had Hannah called Peterson? No, she wouldn't dare. He straightened his tie and walked into his boss's office. Mr. Peterson was a man perpetually stressed, but today he looked like he'd won the lottery. "Mason?" he boomed, gesturing for Jack to sit. This was new. "Sir, I don't know how you did it, kid, but you did it." "Sir, I'm not sure what." Aura Dynamic. They called, they won a final pitch, and they specifically asked for you. Jack's brain stalled. "Me? They asked for me?" "By name. We'd like to hear from your Mr. Jackery Mason." That's what the man said. "This is it, Jack. The big one. You are leading this pitch. It's tomorrow 10 a.m. at their headquarters in the Horizon Plaza. Don't blow this, Mason. This isn't just your career. This is the whole firm." Jack walked out of the office in a daze. They had asked for him. How had they seen his admittedly mediocre portfolio? It didn't matter. This was it. Fate. He was a winner after all. He was being recognized. He was so high on his own arrogance he didn't even consider why a multi-billion-dollar fund would personally request a failing mid-level advisor. He completely forgot about Hannah, the blackmail, the $500,000. That was chump change now. He was about to land Dominic Winter's personal account. He'd be a partner by Christmas. He spent the next 24 hours in a frenzy preparing his pitch. He was full of bluster buzzwords and baseless projections. He was going to charm the pants off this reclusive billionaire. Meanwhile, in a quiet home in the Palisades, Hannah was nervous. "Dom, what did you do?" He just stopped. "Kincaid said he hasn't tried to contact me." "I just offered him an opportunity," Dominic said, handing her a cup of chamomile tea. "What kind of opportunity?" Dominic looked at her. "The kind he can't resist. The kind that will require him to stand in a room and show us exactly who he is. Us." Hannah said, her hand going to her stomach, which was now a distinct, lovely curve under her sweater. "He's giving a presentation tomorrow, at my office, and I would very much like it if you were there." "What in the room, Dom? I can't. I don't want to see him." "You won't have to," Dominic said, his voice gentle. "There's a private observation lounge attached to the main boardroom. One-way glass. You'll be comfortable and you'll be safe. But I think after what he did, you deserve to see this." Hannah was terrified, but a small hard kernel of strength, one that had been growing with her child, nodded. "Okay, I'll be there." The Horizon Plaza was not a building. It was a statement of dominance. It was a spear of dark glass and recycled steel that pierced the Los Angeles sky so tall that the air at its peak seemed thinner, cleaner. The private elevator for the 70th floor penthouse, the exclusive domain of Aura Dynamic, moved with a silent, terrifying velocity. Jack Mason felt his ears pop. He swallowed, tasting the sour tang of nervous adrenaline. Beside him, Mr. Peterson was rigid, his face pale, clutching a leather portfolio as if it were a life raft. They were ushered out into a lobby that was more like a modern art museum. The scale was overwhelming. The ceilings were 30 feet high, and the entire west-facing wall was a single seamless pane of glass revealing a breathtaking, godlike view of the city stretching from the Hollywood Hills to the distant glimmer of the Pacific. The air was cool and smelled faintly of ozone and old wood. There was no art on the walls, Jack realized. The view was the art. "Gentlemen, this way." A severe-looking woman with a nearly invisible earpiece led them down a long, impossibly wide corridor. Their expensive, hard-soled shoes made no sound on the floor, which was made of some dark matte material that seemed to absorb the light. Jack felt an unfamiliar smallness creeping in. His Zegna suit, which had felt like armor in the lobby of his own building, now felt like a cheap costume. The boardroom door hissed open a silent hydraulic sigh. The room was dominated by a 50-foot-long table that appeared to be carved from a single massive piece of polished black wood. 5 people, 3 men and 2 women, sat at the far end, illuminated by a soft recessed light. They were the board members. They didn't look up, their attention focused on the integrated tablets before them. They radiated an aura of bored, absolute power. At the head of the table sat one empty chair, a high-backed, imposing throne of black leather and chrome. The entire far wall was the dark-tinted window Jack had seen from the outside. It felt less like a window and more like a void reflecting the room back at them. "Gentlemen," one of the board members said, a woman with sharp gray hair not bothering with introductions. "Mr. Winters is delayed. Please begin." Peterson gave Jack a sharp, "Don't you dare mess this up" look. Jack fumbled for his laptop, his hands suddenly slick with sweat. "Thank you." He began, his voice an octave higher than he intended. He cleared his throat. "It is an honor, a distinct honor to be here today. A real privilege. We at Peterson & Cole believe in the future, and you are the future." He launched into his pitch. It was the same one he always gave, full of flashy graphics. He didn't fully understand and aggressive buzzwords. Synergistic growth, next-gen leveraging, disruptive positive frameworks. He could feel himself losing them. Their expressions were blank, cold, and unimpressed. One of the men tapped a pen, a precise, rhythmic click, click, click that drilled into Jack's skull. Peterson, sensing the disaster, was starting to look rigid, his jaw clenched so tight a muscle spasmed in his cheek. Jack was 20 minutes in, sweating profusely, his words tumbling out in a desperate, meaningless stream, when the main boardroom door hissed open again. He glanced over, annoyed at the interruption. A man walked in. He was in a simple, dark gray t-shirt, dark jeans, and simple, unbranded sneakers. He looked like a lost IT guy, maybe someone from the mailroom. Jack almost scoffed. But the room's entire gravitational pull shifted. The board members who had been ignoring Jack sat up straight. Their focus became absolute. The man who was tapping his pen instantly stilled. The newcomer walked to the head of the table, his movements economical and quiet. He didn't strut. He didn't have to. He simply occupied the space. "My apologies for the delay," the man said. His voice was quiet, but it filled the cavernous room, cutting through Jack's nervous rambling. "Please continue, Mr. Mason." Jack's brain stalled. He looked at Peterson, who was staring at the man with a look of terrified reverence. This was Dominic Winters, this nondescript, quiet man. He looked normal. He looked like nothing. Yes," Jack stammered, trying to find his place in his slideshow. "Yes, well, as you can see from the 5-year projection, the key indicators." "Let's stop there," Dominic said. He held up a hand. He hadn't even glanced at the screen. He was looking directly at Jack. His eyes were a pale, neutral blue, and they were terrifyingly perceptive. They weren't angry, they were discerning, like a scientist looking at a specimen on a slide. "Your projections are fiction, Mr. Mason," Dominic said, his voice still perfectly calm. "Your understanding of the green tech sector is, to be frank, insulting. Your entire pitch is based on a paradigm that was outdated 5 years ago." Peterson went white, not pale, white. "Mr. Winters, I assure you, Jack is one of our best." "His research?" "One of your best at what?" Dominic interrupted, his quiet voice cutting Peterson off instantly. "At Aura, we don't just invest in numbers. We don't care about synergistic growth. We invest in people, in character, in integrity. We invest in the kind of person who does the right thing, especially when they believe no one is looking." A cold, specific dread began to crawl up Jack's spine. This felt targeted. He tried to recover. "Sir, I pride myself on my character. My integrity it's everything to me." "Is it?" Dominic leaned forward, his hands clasping on the dark wood. "Then let's talk about your character, Jack. Let's talk about last Tuesday, around 11:30 a.m., in the Erewhon Market on 3rd Street. Aisle 4. The cracker aisle." Jack's blood evaporated. He stopped breathing. The boardroom, the city, the whole world contracted to the space between him and this quiet, intense man. He looked at Dominic Winters, and for the first time he saw him. He saw the cold, brilliant intelligence. He saw the man from the legends. I don't recall," Jack stammered. It was a pathetic lie, and the entire room knew it. "Then let me refresh your memory," Dominic said. "You were there with a woman named Tanya, and you ran into your ex-wife, Hannah. You proceeded to mock her. You called her fat. You told her she'd let herself go. You humiliated a woman who was at that very moment suffering from severe morning sickness, a woman who was just trying to buy ginger ale." The details were so precise, so exact, that Jack felt his knees buckle. He grabbed the edge of the lectern to steady himself. "And then," Dominic continued, his voice dropping to an icy whisper, "it gets worse. You didn't stop there. You accessed her private calendar. You stalked her. You cornered her in a dark alley behind her bakery. And you blackmailed her." "No," Jack gasped. Peterson made a small choked sound like a dying animal. "Oh yes." Dominic's eyes were like ice chips. "You threatened to go to the press. You threatened to create a scandal. You demanded $500,000 for your silence, all because you'd figured out she was seeing a doctor you knew she couldn't afford." Jack's world was tilting. His mind was a scramble of pure white-hot panic. How could you possibly... How do you know this?" He was pleading, though he didn't know for what. "You're wondering how I know," Dominic said. He looked at Jack, a predator who had finally cornered his prey. "You're wondering who the mystery man is, the man you thought you could extort, the father of her child." Dominic stood up. He was not a large man, but he radiated in power that sucked all the air from the room. He placed his hands flat on the table. "It's me, you idiot." The words hit Jack like a physical blow. He stumbled back, his legs giving out, and he collapsed into one of the empty chairs. I am the man she defrauded you with months after she had the good sense and strength to leave you. I am the man whose child she is carrying, the child you threatened." Jack was hyperventilating, his vision tunneling. He looked around frantically as if he could find an escape. Hannah, I'm sorry, I didn't know. It was a mistake. A joke. Please." He was looking around the room as if she might be hiding under the table. "She can't hear you," Dominic said coldly. "But she can see you." Dominic gestured to the vast dark window that had been looming over them. There was a soft click. The polarization on the glass faded, and the light inside the observation lounge behind it came up. And there she was. It was Hannah. She was standing tall, her hand resting on her pregnant stomach, which was now a distinct, lovely curve under a simple, elegant blue dress. She was not the fat, sloppy woman from the market. She was not the terrified victim from the alley. She was radiant. She was serene. Her eyes met Jack's, and there was no hatred in them, no fear. There was only a quiet finality. She looked powerful. She looked beautiful. She looked untouchable. Jack's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. The humiliation he had heaped on her, the casual cruelty he had dispensed his entire life, returned to him 1,000-fold in this glass tower in front of the most powerful people he'd ever met. He looked from the ghost of the woman he'd destroyed to the billionaire who had protected her, and he finally understood. He was nothing. Dominic Winters looked at the shell of a man, then shifted his gaze to the horrified, ashen-faced Mr. Peterson. "The meeting is over." The heavy boardroom door hissed shut, sealing Jack and Mr. Peterson in the elevator. The descent from the 70th floor was perfectly silent, a smooth, soundless plunge. Jack could feel the pressure changing in his ears, or perhaps that was the blood pounding in his head. He was panting, his skin slick with a cold sweat. Mr. Peterson did not look at him. He stood ramrod straight, his face a mask of ashen, terrified fury, staring at the polished steel doors. "Sir," Jack finally choked out, his voice a pathetic squeak. "Sir, that was a setup. A complete misunderstanding. She's my ex-wife. She's manipulative. She lied to him. I can fix this. I'll call him. I'll write a letter. I'll apologize." Peterson turned his movement so sharp Jack flinched. "Apologize," he hissed, his voice a low, venomous rasp. "You don't apologize for this. You don't fix this. You're a disease, Mason. You're an infection, and you've just killed my firm." "No, sir. It's one account, a big one, but we can recover." "You still don't get it, do you?" Peterson's voice was rising, cracking with a hysteria Jack had never heard. "You think this was about one account? This was Dominic Winters. You didn't just insult him. You blackmailed his pregnant girlfriend. You stood in a grocery store and... He couldn't even say it. He jabbed a trembling finger into Jack's chest. "You called the mother of the Winters heir fat." The word echoed in the small, sterile box. "Do you know what blacklist means in his world, you catastrophic moron?" Peterson was almost screaming now. "It doesn't mean we don't get his account. It means our creditors will call in our loans by 5 o'clock. It means our top-tier clients, the ones who do business with Winters' other holdings, will have their lawyers on the phone with us by noon, terminating their contracts. You haven't just lost a whale, Mason. You've sunk the entire fleet. You've bankrupted us all. Sir, We're done!" Peterson roared, his face purple. "My company, my life's work. It's over. And you—" The elevator chimed softly, signaling their arrival in the lobby. The doors hissed open. "Get out!" Peterson spat. He shoved Jack hard, sending him stumbling onto the marble floor. "Get out! Mr. Peterson, please. Don't call me. Don't come to the office. Your access is already revoked." He gestured to the stoic security guard by the desk, who was watching with a cold, neutral expression. "If I ever see your face again, I'll have you arrested for trespassing. Your things will be in a box on the curb by the time you get there. You're fired." Peterson turned, straightened his tie with a sharp, violent tug, and stormed out of the building, disappearing into the glare of the morning sun. Jack was left alone in the center of the vast, echoing lobby. He was still shaking. Revoked. He fumbled in his pocket, pulled out his corporate Amex. He needed a drink. He needed to think. His phone buzzed. He looked down, his hands trembling. A text from Tanya. "Where are you?" "My card just got declined at Vuitton. Fix it." The message was so trivial, so monumentally stupid in the face of the abyss that had just opened beneath him, that he almost laughed. Fix it. He tried to open his mobile banking app to check his balance. Access denied. Account frozen. His firm-issued phone. His firm-linked accounts. Peterson wasn't exaggerating. He was being erased. He walked numb toward the security turnstiles, just to see. He held his building access card up to the sensor. A red light flashed. "Access denied." "You need to leave the premises, sir," the guard said, his voice no longer respectful, just firm. "Not Mr. Mason." "Sir." Jack was ushered out of the revolving doors and onto the sidewalk. The Los Angeles noise hit him like a physical blow, the horns, the sirens, the sun. He was just another man on the street, blinking in the sudden harsh light. He sank onto a hard public bench, the Zegna suit suddenly feeling like a clown costume. He was ruined. Not just in trouble, not just fired. He was ruined utterly and completely. He had flown too close to the sun, and his wax wings built of arrogance and cruelty had melted in an instant. He thought of Hannah. He saw her face, not the powerful, serene woman behind the glass, but the tired, pale woman in the grocery store, her hand on her stomach. He hadn't seen a pregnancy. He hadn't seen a person. He'd seen a target. He'd seen a weakness. He'd seen a payday. He thought back even further to the woman he'd met in college. The one who had supported him, who had believed in him, the one whose gentle, steady light he had spent 8 long years trying to extinguish, resentful that it wasn't a spotlight on him. And in this moment of total blinding eclipse, he finally devastatingly understood what he had lost. He hadn't just lost a fortune. He'd thrown away a treasure, and he'd done it for free simply out of spite. He was bankrupt in every single way a man could be. 6 months later. The air was different here. It didn't smell of diesel and hot pavement. It smelled of salt and jasmine. The only sound was the rhythmic crash of the Pacific Ocean on the private beach below. Hannah was resting in a cushioned chaise lounge on a wide, sun-drenched deck. This was not a glass tower. It was a home nestled into the cliffs of a private gated community in Malibu. It was made of warm teak and natural stone, a place Dominic had designed to be sustainable, peaceful, and almost invisible to the world. She was 8 months pregnant, her body beautifully, undeniably round. She was in a soft white linen dress, her feet bare, her hair in a loose braid. She was reading a novel, one hand resting protectively on the taut sphere of her belly. She felt for the first time in her life completely at home in her own skin. The sliding glass door opened, and Dominic came out holding 2 tall glasses of lemonade. He sat beside her, not in the other chair, but on the edge of hers, his touch immediate and instinctual. His hand came to rest on her stomach just as a tiny foot kicked against his palm. "He's active today." Dominic smiled, his eyes soft. Hannah corrected him, the familiar happy joke passing between them. "She's decided she's a soccer player." "I stand corrected." Dominic laughed, pressing his palm flat as another kick came. "She's got a strong leg. Definitely her mother's." They sat in a comfortable, easy silence for a long moment, watching the waves. Kincaid had delivered a final discreet report 2 weeks prior. Jack Mason was working at a call center in Bakersfield. He was living in a 400-square-foot studio apartment, his assets seized in the lawsuits that followed the collapse of Peterson and Cole. Tanya had vanished the day his cards were declined. The file was closed. A closed book. "Do you ever—" Hannah started, her voice soft, tracing the condensation on her glass. "Do you ever feel bad about what happened to him?" Dominic looked out at the ocean, his expression thoughtful. He was not a vindictive man. "I don't feel good about it, Han," he said finally. "I don't take joy in anyone's destruction, but I don't feel bad. I feel that actions have consequences." He turned to her, his gaze holding hers. "He made a choice. He chose to be cruel over and over. He built his entire life on the belief that he was smarter than everyone else and that kindness was a weakness to be exploited. He picked the wrong prey." He touched her stomach, his gaze softening. "He wasn't just threatening me. He wasn't just threatening my privacy. He threatened you. And he threatened her. My only job, the only one that truly matters, is to protect this, to protect our family." He threaded his fingers through hers. "I didn't ruin him, Hannah. He ruined himself. I just built the stage and turned on the lights so everyone could finally see him for who he really was." Hannah leaned her head on his shoulder. The old voices, Jack's voices, the ones that had lived in her head for a decade, telling her she wasn't thin enough, smart enough, or enough in any way, were finally silent. They hadn't been replaced by Dominic's voice. They had been replaced by her own. She was no longer just Hannah the ex-wife or Hannah the baker. She was a partner. She was a mother. She was finally just Hannah. And it was more than enough. She took his hand and placed it back on her belly, covering it with her own. "I love you, Dom. I love you," he whispered back, kissing the top of her head. He leaned down, his voice a soft murmur against her skin. "And I love you," he said to their daughter. The sun began to set, painting the sky in impossible shades of orange and violet, and for the first time in her entire life, Hannah looked toward the future with nothing but absolute unfiltered peace. What happens when arrogance and cruelty meet quiet, unshakable power? The story of Hannah and Jack is a stark reminder that the way we treat people, especially those we think are beneath us, has consequences that can ripple out in ways we could never predict. Jack saw weakness and fat. He failed to see the strength of a mother and the protection of a man who could move mountains. Hannah found that her new life wasn't just about a billionaire. It was about finding her own worth, a worth that had nothing to do with her weight or her bank account. Thank you so much for watching. We all know someone who has been underestimated or torn down. If this story of justice and karma resonated with you, please help us share it. Hit that like button. Share this video with your friends, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel for more real-life dramatic stories just like this one. What did you think of Jack's downfall? Let us know in the comments below.